Welcome back, everybody, to Edge of the Rabbit Hole. I'm author and ghost historian Mike Ricksecker. With me, as always, my co-hostess, Victoria Monday. And down in the chat room, Quarantine Ghost, haunting the chat. We have a fantastic show coming up for you tonight. Jonny Enoch, esoteric researcher, is back with us. You probably recall seeing him with me there on Alaska Triangle. He's been featured on Gaia a number of times. Always has a lot of projects in the works. And we're going to be talking about a number of those things tonight, as well as some very, very interesting topics. So, Jonny, welcome back.
Well, thanks for having me back. It's great to be here, Mike. And last time we had a lot of fun exploring all these different topics, and we're going to go into a few new ones tonight. And, of course, it's great to be here with Victoria. What a great addition to the show.
It's so nice to finally meet you, Jonny. I mean, I just enjoyed chatting with you before.
Yeah, you guys were having an interesting little discussion before we got rolling here. So I was kind of kicking back and I was like, oh, this is interesting. You do Facebook.
Yeah, I book face. You know, I try to keep up with all these new trends, the Snapchats, the Instagrams, but everybody keeps coming back to Facebook. Except there's certain people I'll talk about it to. Like if I talk about it to my son and his friends who are all teenagers, they say, okay, boomer, when I mention Facebook to them. So
just bring up MySpace and see what happens. You know?
Oh, geez.
Is that still around? Oh, well, yeah.
I think technically it is, but yeah, I haven't touched that in years. But so, Jonny, when we were chatting earlier today, we're just going to dive right into it because I know you've kind of been itching to talk about it. And you mentioned it here again before we went live. Psychic technology. Now, this is a fascinating area of study, and I just really want to get your insights on it because I know you've been wanting to talk about it. And you're such an amazing guy. You have such a wealth of knowledge, and so tell us about psychic technology.
Well, thanks for asking, first of all, Mike. And you know, I feel the same way about you. I mean, we were just talking about this as the show was starting, that I have never seen anyone, and I think Victoria can vouch for this. I've never seen anybody who knows how to tweak Zoom out the way that you do. And let me just break it down for the audience before we get into psychic technology.
All right.
It is relevant. So this guy has the Zoom windows popping up, zooming them in, you know, tweaking out the size and the pixels and the audio levels, and then switching it all around into some sort of, you know, digital matrix. It's absolutely incredible. And you have such an astonishing background with technology. And is it U.S. Air Force that you're with?
Yeah, 6 years in the Air Force, 3 in Alaska, and 3 in Maryland at no such agency. So, yeah.
Well, okay, so that's relevant to what we're about to talk about today. Exactly, Victoria. It's actually
monolith.
It is, exactly. She has a monolith behind her, and I mean, that's amazing. That's relevant today too.
It is.
You know, that we see that all around. That's very impressive, by the way, even if it is made with Reynolds wrap. But
let me get my foil hat on first.
Right.
But you know, here's the thing, is that in my conversations that I've had with military scientists and people who are in the know, because, you know, I have most certainly this love and this pursuit of forbidden knowledge. And so, you know, looking at these subjects, there is a very real side to these psychic abilities and the reality that we're all living in, this universe that we're all living in, which, by the way, you know, every second we're witnessing the birth and death of universes. Every second you're impregnating reality with your thoughts. Okay. So when we look all around us, what we're seeing is this is like the phoenix that rises from the ashes. It's constantly rebirthing itself. You're witnessing this constant flow of this birth and death of universes, like the dance of Shiva the destroyer. Things are constantly being recreated and reborn every single second. And again, Mike, I know I'm repeating myself because you and I talked about this the other day. We were just going through this about how when we see reality unfolding, that it's just like the mother octopus who gives up her body for her young octopi to feed off of her. Well, that's because our reality is nonlinear. The only thing that's linear about it is that our minds give this illusion that everything is happening in a straight line. But it's all an illusion that's created, that we're constantly living by. So when we see this happening, we might ask ourselves, is it possible that we can step back and forth in time? Okay. Not all of us have a flux capacitor that, is in the back of a DeLorean that we can head back in time. But is it possible that we could head somewhere out in the universe and, let's say, capture the time, let's say, when Henry VIII was, beheading his wives? Or can we go back and look at the times of Napoleon? Well, you might say that perhaps we've stumbled upon that before. In my conversations with some folks that have been involved in these projects, they told me that some 30 years ago, they were present over in Jakarta of Indonesia. And I'm relating this story to you and your audience now because you yourself, being someone who's been involved in the U.S. Air Force, you've been involved in the technological and scientific areas of this, and you've probably seen a great deal of things yourself. But when these folks were there, what they said is they were experimenting with a type of lighting with these cameras. They were using ASI technology, and they were using between 100 million to 300 million when you go into the light frequency spectrum of using something called a lightning bolt condensed ballistic flash. Okay. And so when they were doing this, it was very similar to what we heard in the Philadelphia experiment. They were able to use this photography to capture these time periods that were far older, far more ancient, that the folks that were showing up on the camera, because of this lightning bolt condensed ballistic flash, these were not from that time period. They did not look like the same people. And they realized that based on how much of these millions of watts were going through there in the ASI technology, that if this was adjusted, there was almost like you could peel back the layers of time like an onion. And I find that very fascinating, that we would potentially have classified technologies that could look at these areas. Now, Mike, I would say, if we can do that technologically, could this be how psychics, such as the ones that you travel with quite frequently in your investigations, could it be that, we naturally have the ability to do that ourselves?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, Jonny, because I've talked to a number of people that have experienced what we would call a time slip, where they witness somebody from another era, and that person looks back at them as almost as if they are what we would call a ghost. So you have one person basically looking back into the past, and that other person, the image that they're seeing, is actually looking into the future. And what you basically just described was a technological way to make that happen, which is absolutely fascinating.
Absolutely. So here's the thing. Here's the takeaway also. It takes very little energy to change the vibration of the atoms in your body. And just to give you an example of this, this is called harmonics. But harmonics, they can be dangerous, okay? So we know if we change the atoms in your body, and so they're not relative to the ground below you, hence relativity, that you'll actually sink through the floor. You'll be under the ground somewhere, okay? So we can also look at this with spatial momentum. We can look at how we could literally affect gravity all around us. In fact, with a little bit of change through this, and what I'm hinting at based on these technologies, you could literally interfere with the subjective reality all around us. You could have people materializing out of walls, floating above the ground. All of these things can be done by changing the harmonics of atoms. And so with that, we got to look at the fact that everyone is already wired for these psychic abilities, and everybody already has these abilities. But you might say we have something called the Gatekeeper, and this Gatekeeper that is basically a filter. It's filtering out reality as it comes to us. This is sort of what keeps us sane. But if more is coming through, let's say if you've ever met a very clairvoyant person, Victoria, are you very clairvoyant? Are you very psychic?
Just me.
Just a little bit. Just a bit.
I
I've noticed that. I've noticed that Mike likes to pick very psychic people to be his co-hosts. So
let's start with V. No.
Just a little bit, yeah.
Just a little bit. No, so absolutely. As soon as the gatekeeper starts to flood in with more information, it starts to change the personality. It changes the ego of the person. And it's sort of like a sphincter, like an esophageal sphincter that's, allowing things to come in and out of it. And I think the more you get recognition, like let's say you go to do remote viewing or whatever it is, the more that door feels more comfortable opening up. Would you find that if you've been remote viewing something or psychically looking at it?
Yeah, a lot of times, I was telling Mike the other day that sometimes I see things and it's like you hold up a negative and you hold up a second negative and you're looking through it. And a lot of times that's when I'm just not thinking of anything and my mind's just kind of drifting and floating. So I don't know if that's relaxing the harmonics or changing the vibrations, but yeah, I totally agree with you. It's just all about your perception.
I totally agree with you. But the amazing part about this is that how the reality is coming to us and how this can affect even if we're looking to do this through a technological means, is that we know that there's these strings and vibrating loops and things like that. We look at atoms, but our brain doesn't download the objects around us as strings or subatomic particles or anything like that. But we get these different frequency ranges like 390 to 750 nanometers or NMs, which is only 100 billionth of a meter, by the way, that come into these photoreceptors in our eyes. And these are downloaded through our rods and cones up into two visual cortices, and they're downloaded into our brains, which is really fascinating. But Mike, have you ever heard of, when you look at particle physics, have you ever heard of what we call Planck units of time?
Yeah, I've heard of that.
So these are usually used to measure like physical constants of matter, right? So our physical constants. So with these, we learned that the cubic center of reality is 10 to the minus 45 nanometers, and that's based on what we call the Planck constant. And the Planck actual is 10 to the minus 34. And this is probably going to change in the future. These are our quantum electromagnetic energy measurements of a photon, or like a beam of light. But when we look outside of the visible light spectrum, what we're going to find in the future when we look in things like infrared and ultraviolet, that there's more going on around us than we ever thought imaginable. We are literally being perceived by so many different things. All this astral wildlife and crazy things are looking in on us. Did either of you ever see years ago, I think his name was Jose Escamilla. He was talking about these things called rods. Did you ever hear about those?
I'm familiar with Jose Escamilla, but I'm not familiar with the rods. What's that?
That's funny. I know rods, but I don't know Jose.
Go figure. He did this documentary about these things that were all around us that were moving. They're almost like these electrical life forms that were feeding off us or feeding off of different electromagnetic fields. One thing I like about this show on Travel Channel, there's one show called The Dead Files. Have you ever seen it?
Oh, sure, yeah.
There's a medium on there. Her name is Amy Allen. Of course, right. You're familiar with her, and maybe the audiences as well. Amy Allen likes to give very creative explanations. When she comes into a house, she doesn't just say, oh, hey, these are ghosts, these are dead people, these are just whatever cretins in the night. She'll say, okay, there's an extraterrestrial life form lingering here that's feeding off of a pond in the back and coming into the house or something, right? So we have like almost all this life around us that's observing us. And I think that there's so many countless forms outside of our light spectrum that we're interacting with, but I'm sure the both of you have encountered these sorts of beings in your investigations.
Mm-hmm, definitely.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I definitely agree with you that if you were to just, remove whatever restricts us from seeing what's around us, that we would be absolutely astonished at everything that surrounds us right now. And every once in a while, on an investigation, or even sometimes just in your house, you'll get a glimpse of that, of the possibilities that are out there. And if there are, I think our research and where we're headed right now, we're trying to, for pun intended, unveil those secrets. So Jonny, where is your research taking you on that?
Well, again, this is really exciting for me to see, because I know that we have talked all about in the past, the Russians have looked at psychic experiments like the old psychic experiments behind the Iron Curtain stuff they looked at. We had J.B. Rhine. We know that there's China has done experiments with psychic children. We've looked at this from many different angles, but we really now are bridging the worlds of our technology and our sciences with this field. So, for example, we were just talking about the infrared. We were talking about looking into these areas like ultraviolet. I don't know if you know this, but this sounds very transhumanist. Have you heard much about nanoparticles and working with those before?
Well, I'm familiar with nanoparticles, sure.
Okay, so just to give you a little breakdown of nanoparticles. Nanoparticles are these 1 atom thick little silicon hexagonal structures made of graphene, and they work just like buckyballs inside the geosynchronistic areas of the body. But essentially, we can give them all sorts of functionality as a sort of biotechnology. So one of the things they've done is they've actually injected these into the eyeballs of rats, and they've given them night vision. Okay, so they've been able to allow them to have a bit of an upgrade so they can see at night. And now we're working in the areas of working into the infrared. Once we get into that, I don't believe we're going to be in that area where we used to be in the dark, when someone like Victoria would walk into a house and all of a sudden she'd say, well, hey, this place needs a cleansing, or I picked this up over here. I see this in the corner. I think we're very close to having the technology to be able to see these different layers. And just like you'd send someone into a building to do a house cleaning, we will get to a point where we will peel back the layers. And that's more and more where our technology is bridging. It's almost becoming magic. And so for my investigations, I think it's very exciting, just as they are for the both of you, because Mike, whenever I talk to you, you're always out on the road and you're heading out there about to crack a big case like Scooby-Doo. And I know that when you're doing this, you're collecting data from a number of different ways. How much technology do you use these days?
It's funny because this year, 2020, I haven't been on the road as much, but over the last couple of months I have. And, it's interesting, Jonny, because I do have, a plethora of, technological equipment with me, different meters and devices, of course, various different cameras. And while that will sometimes pick up maybe different fluctuations, or I'll get interesting readings, it might even pick up, something like a shadow person on camera, which I have before, I actually pick up more with my own body. Like I can walk into a room and sense, okay, yeah, something's going on here. And it's almost those moments that are much more profound to me than just what the technology picks up, that what my own personal vibration and resonance is able to detect is extremely fascinating. And I think, as we get further down the road, it's going to be the meshing of these two things, what we pick up with our own selves and the technology, meshing those two things together to be able to see these other dimensions and realities.
I think it's very exciting to look at. And most certainly, even with consciousness, where we're going with that, I don't know if you've heard of the quantum consciousness theories that we've had from Stuart Hameroff over at the University of Arizona and Tucson, as well as Sir Roger Penrose. Have you looked at much of those?
I haven't delved deep into that yet. It's but it's right down the avenue where I'm headed with a lot of my own research.
No, I totally get that. The last little while, and how this relates to that with quantum consciousness, psychic technology, and everything we're talking about, I'm not going to segue too far off out there. I'm going to bring it right back into the center of our conversation, so don't worry. But the last little while, I've actually been experimenting with the Oculus Quest 2, which is
sitting there right behind you, isn't it?
It's sitting right there. Yeah, I sit in that chair sometimes, and I've been using the Oculus. It's kind of interesting because there's a show on Amazon Prime right now, and the show is called upload, I believe. It's been a while since I turned on my Amazon Prime because I've been so busy lately. But on there, they kind of show this idea that after you die or just before that, you can have your consciousness uploaded into a computer simulation system with the hope that later on they could clone you and you could be re-uploaded. But that after folks that we know died, we could interact with their consciousness. Well, traditionally, we've said, okay, this would be a rather impossible or implausible sort of scenario. However, what we're told now in these quantum consciousness theories is that your consciousness, it is held together through something known as quantum cohesion, which is kind of like colloquially what we've said for years in physics is quantum entanglement or a superpositioning, that you could be basically located at these two places at once. So your consciousness sits in here like a vehicle, and your brain has these things called microtubules, which is sort of like this way for you to utilize these things like a supercomputer. It's a computational device. So essentially, your consciousness has its own vibration, its own signal, its own frequency. You have your own IP address, to give it a Mike Ricksecker technical IT term on the network. So we all do. And this is how our quantum internet is going to work very soon. But just like when Victoria goes to contact somebody, if she makes contact with them, they have a unique frequency or vibration that they can triangulate and work with. The same is true for a friend of mine that I work with, Patricia Mona, who does a lot of this sort of psychic work. So this is how people are located. But the interesting thing is that people are always arguing on the internet and in books, are we living in a simulation? Are we uploaded? Do we have that? Well, our spiritual teachings have always kind of told us that there's this temporal reality that we're all living in. And most certainly, you're proving that all the time on these investigations, that consciousness is sometimes lingering around, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a whole chapter in the Shadow Person book on the simulated universe and those possibilities. And you're right. It's something that our religions have talked about for years, that we're here temporarily and we go on to somewhere else. We're down here, whether it's being tested or what have you. So even from a spiritual aspect, we've always had this idea of a simulated universe. Personally, I don't necessarily believe that it's a computer simulation. I think it's something much more advanced. It's either organic, biological, molecular, something on that level, far surpassing what we think of as computer technology. What do you think of that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are the greatest supercomputers ourselves. I mean, the way that these bodies operate are absolutely incredible. I mean, you have 100 trillion cells in your body, 100 trillion atoms in a cell, and 100 trillion cells in an atom. Atoms are made of mostly blank spaces. We could fit that area, almost 8 billion people in the world, on the end of our pinky finger, just to give you a little bit of spatial recognition there, how insignificantly, infinitesimally small all of this is and how connected we all are. And this comes back to the great idea of what this greater implication of all of this is in all of our simulated lives and experiences of why we're here, as we're here to grow and evolve. I mean, we really got to ask ourselves, who is the whole? Who is this, egocentric, sovereign self, this self that we're a part of when we look at each other, that we're all connected. I am you, Mike. I am you, Victoria. We're all connected, and everyone watching this on the greater implication. And that brings it back again and again to the greater lessons we learn from our religions and our spiritual teachings. So I think it's a wonderful simulation, whatever it is. And sometimes, like the year 2020, it's one hell of a simulation. I'll tell you that.
Just a little bit. Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. So.
Yes.
Victoria, go ahead. I've been kind of monopolizing the questions.
My brain's been working. I'm enjoying listening to Jonny. No. Go on.
All right.
I'm learning.
It's always fascinating listening to Jonny. Yeah, Jonny is absolutely amazing. So
I admit, I went back and listened to his old shows. And was like,
oh yeah. So I binge watched his channel, Metaphysical Source, which you guys better subscribe to that after this show.
You guys are too nice.
After the after one.
No, it's
you're too kind.
We love you, Jonny.
I learned from watching the Edge of the Rabbit Hole. By the way, I found out I have Edge of the Rabbit Hole on Spotify. Get it on there, get it on YouTube, get it everywhere.
It's everywhere.
It is everywhere. We do have some questions from the chat, so we'll get to a couple of these here. From Kat Gash. Do you think the Philadelphia Project was an experiment in time slip or teleportation?
Whether it was accidental or an intentional experiment, I most certainly do think we saw that, as well as, we've heard of other things from Preston Nichols and who worked with Preston Nichols again? Was it Peter Moon? That's it. And that did that work when they uncovered everything at the Montauk Project, but most certainly, absolutely.
Okay. This is
Wouldn't that almost be the same thing? I'm sorry. Would that almost be the same thing, a time slip and a teleportation?
Yeah, well, here's the interesting thing. When we get into that, and I won't segue too much because I know we have other questions. I mean, we can look at an Einstein-Rosen bridge, or we can see these ideas of what Einstein called the spooky effect at a distance, the guy behind me. And so
right.
If we look at this like a tuning fork, when we could take something and or even splitting an atom, and that you can split an atom, you can take a piece of it, and whatever you do to that piece over here is going to affect the other one, or it's going to tune to a certain type of a vibration or frequency. I'd say these exist all over our universe. We have all these kind of wormholes, tunnels, ways that they could be brought in there. And again, this is where when we get into our esoteric studies, we know that what do you do when you all get together in an esoteric group? You form this circle. Like a healing circle, a seance circle, we have crop circles, we have fairy circles. We know that time can be bent, warped, and twisted. So there's all kinds of very interesting implications, bringing it back to what we were saying at the beginning with harmonics and changing the vibration of atoms and the spin.
Fantastic.
Sorry.
No, that's great. That's great. This is
with meditation. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Victoria.
Meditation, because when my friends get together, we kind of lift each other up, and it's just like you said, the harmonics of the group go higher and higher. So isn't that almost like the same thing as meditation? Or
yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I think that the one buzzword that's being used a lot these days is harmonic oscillation and or harmonic resonance. I've often thought that when you're burning even incense, or people talk about how sage can be purifying to a room, I think you're changing those qualities of the room. And meditation most certainly does it. So does chanting. So does singing bowls. Have you ever seen those Tibetan prayer bells?
Yeah.
That you
ding.
So yeah, absolutely. I would say it all does that. And again, I mean, we could go down that rabbit hole further.
Oh, certainly. And because we'll light up like Nicole and I, we'll light up the incense. We'll put some intentions out there to the universe, and I believe setting that, those types of positive, whether you want to call it harmonics or vibrations or what have you, I think that has a profound impact on the world around you.
Oh, most certainly. Most certainly. I mean, that's why I believe in the power of prayer. No doubt that, we go back into a doctor. There's a Catholic doctor named Dr. Boguslaw, and he did these very famous studies on groups that when they were praying, that he was able to measure, sort of like what you do with those, I'm assuming it's probably a K2 meter and electromagnetic frequencies, right, and looking at these fields of this exchange of energy and people that were gathering up praying, and also empirically studying the recovery time of people in hospitals and how fast they got better with prayer versus without it. not to mention the psychological implications we've seen in the studies of as a coping mechanism. So with that being said, there are all kinds of ways that this vibratory quality works. And again, what used to be considered the matter of quacks and charlatans, of all this stuff talking about dimensions and everything, this is now what we're taught in theoretical physics.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Got a couple more questions here from the chat that I do want to get to before we dive even deeper down the rabbit hole.
Of course.
From Betty Lange, does Jonny feel that times in the past, like the 1960s, were open to many of the ideas you're now talking about?
Yeah, I mean, most certainly we see these currents and wavelengths of evolutions, cultural and consciousness evolutions. The 1950s and 60s were a very special time, 60s and 70s even. And whether some of that was helped along, we do know that there was different experimentation going on. I don't know if anybody watching is from California, but if you know California very well, especially in the valley, the San Fernando Valley, you go up into Mulholland Drive and Laurel Canyon. Well, we know there was all kinds of not only MK Ultra experiments, but there was experiments going in the movement with certain psychedelic substances and the ushering in of a consciousness movement. But I'm not one of those guys that completely dismisses these things all up to some great, experimentation. I think that these things naturally evolve as well for humanity. And it was time for us to move forward. But the 60s was an important time. But also, I would say, look at the Renaissance period. The Renaissance period that we had brought forth all kinds of great thinkers and inventors and religious, mathematical types of inventions too, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think every generation seems to have their people that come forth, and it seems to always have its own identity given that generation. You mentioned the Renaissance, and you look at the 1960s, like Betty was saying, and even today it has its own almost flavor, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, go on, Victoria.
Oh, well, I'm throwing astrology in there now. If you think about it, because that's what I do. The 60s, that's when the age of Aquarius was actually starting. So that was a shift in thinking, and it's actually here now. So now we're having it, for lack of a better word, a renaissance in thinking, a different way of thinking. That's all I was going to say.
That's a good point. And when we look at astrotheology, so that's a very, very good point from an astrology point of view. Astrotheology, because we know that there's a religious and astrotheological religious component that goes along the whole way. And if you look at something like the New Testament of the Bible, for example, we see that there is an encoded story there. And so Jesus, for example, we know, who was multiplying two fish and encountered two fishermen. This is like Pisces that we see, right?
Right. That was the beginning of the Piscean age, right?
Right, absolutely. Yeah. And we see that moving forward. But then in Luke 22:10 of the Bible, they say to him, Master, where are you going to be at the Last Supper? And he says, meet me at the house with the man with the water pitcher. Well, who's the water pitcher, right? It's the
Aquarius. Right.
It's Aquarius bringing the waters of spring. But at the same time with that, with Aquarius coming in, he says, I will be with you to the end of the eon. Well, some people think that's the end of the world. It just means to the end of an age. And so we know that as we're shifting in our axial rotation of the earth, that the ancients always knew, as you rightfully pointed out, Victoria, that every age had its unique personality and characteristics. So it's a very exciting, daunting, strange time to be alive, and a wonderful too.
It is. I mean, just the ideas that I've seen this year, since we have been limited in what we can do, like Zoom meetings and children going to school through computers, and we've totally changed, and we have redone the way we basically live. So, I mean, can you just imagine what we can do when it's not COVID?
Totally.
I'm just okay. Nerd.
No,
okay.
Totally. No. You pointed it out. I mean, this is all part of our evolution. We are here to grow and evolve. And no matter what happens to us in our lives and whatever direction, we chose to be here at this time. And it's a very important step. I mean, these are very exciting times. And even, bringing it back over to what Mike was talking about also with this Alaska Triangle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, of all the times on Earth that, that people have been around, people haven't been open to talking about these things at the level we are today, of looking into them, delving into them. I mean, in what period of history, to bring it back over to what you're saying about Zoom calls and people attending school digitally, have we ever turned on the news and seen monoliths showing up?
It's one behind Victoria.
It was at Waterburger.
I think the monolith, though, my opinion on the monolith, I think it's probably an engineering prank, but I personally think yours is the best one I've seen.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we're actually going to be talking about the monoliths on the show following this on Beyond the Shadows. And yeah, I do believe it's a engineering prank. And there have been a couple of guys that came forward and said, we're artists, and we put one of them. It was one of them in California that they actually put together. But to me, it's fascinating the way that the world is now. I mean, we've always been connected, but we're technologically connected on a much different level than in the past. And just news traveling like that virally over the internet, and all of a sudden, all these people from around the globe start clamoring onto the same idea. And 2020 has been such a crazy year. I think this is something to kind of lighten the atmosphere and for all of us to kind of grab onto and push forward into 2021.
Yeah, it's totally connected us all. I mean, it was in California one day, Romania the next day, and then it was in downtown Houston and Duluth at the same time. Time slip.
It's time slipping away. Most certainly, that's it is. It's everywhere. It's bilocated. But I agree with you. It's a very interesting time we're living in, and people haven't even begun to see anything yet. Over this decade, you will see some of the strangest things you ever thought imaginable. The way the world would change, the way that we change, the way that our technology will be used. It's going to be almost to the point of where technology literally becomes magic. The ability to back up your cells in your body, to clone body parts at the same time. Parts of our consciousness, merging in ways where, we're going to question things with privacy. We're going to question who we are, where we come from, and this greater purpose of things. But at the end of the day, I think that's where our philosophies, our spirituality, for folks that are religious folks, that's where these things can become a protector of you, and they can help you understand and integrate them better.
Okay, I have a question, because I know how much you love Disney.
Okay.
Do you think
good.
if Walt was alive now, do you think he would back himself up? I mean, because you've always heard the stories about his head being frozen somewhere. Do you think he would be one of those that would?
Well,
use
first
the
of all,
biological, yeah.
I tend to think he probably would. I'll tell you why. Because well, first of all, I do love Walt, so thank you so much for the question. I do love Walt Disney. I think he was such a brilliant mind and man. And not only was he fascinated by the Rosicrucian mysteries, he was a young member of D. Malaise. He had a great salute to the mysterious aspects of things out there. And in fact, when you look at even his ideas that he had that were never developed, like if you've been to Disneyland and you see the submarine area, that was an area he was building for Atlantis. And there are the remnants of giant blocks and things down there, or his own monoliths he left in there. So, but even when you look at the concepts of, let's say, Tomorrowland, or you look at the concepts of as you and I have discussed, as we were all discussing before the show, that when Disneyland was built, he contracted out the guys from SRI, the Stanford Research Institute. Now, these are the guys that later on with Dr. Hal Puthoff, Uri Geller, Ingo Swann, Pat Price, all of them. These are your greatest remote viewers and psychics in these programs. So Walt worked with SRI to build Disneyland on the 33rd parallel, put the castle in the center of the where the energy was coming, put the carousel behind it to spin out the energy like a Tesla coil. And this was documented not only by Walter Bosley and The Key to the Kingdom, but again, here's a guy that was innately fascinated by the future. He was innately fascinated by the strange and mysterious, and that heart of magic and love is there. And I do want to say this, Victoria, that a lot of us out there, we might have the idea that future technologies and things might be evil, or they might impede on who we are. And I think we have to find a balance of that. When you had a beautiful heart like Walt Disney, you can only look into these things with a childlike curiosity and love, right?
Oh, exactly. I'm just really looking forward. I mean, I know a lot of people see doom and gloom and 2020 and the plague and all this, but I only see optimism.
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying, and it is difficult out there right now. We're going through some really alarming and big changes, and there's a number of things that we see coming into play. It is a strange time, and it will get stranger over this decade. There are going to be very strange things that you will witness. Not only I believe that we're going to have a strange aspect in learning more about our extraterrestrial friends, but we are going to see things change on the Earth starting next year within our weather patterns of very, very, very strange weather that's going to keep building up. And for that, even our ability to reach out to the stars, but the more that we reach out, we might find the further that we're going to go within. And that's where a lot of this stuff that so far we've classified as the esoteric, as the metaphysical, as the strange, as the paranormal, as the edge of the rabbit hole is just going to keep taking us further and further and deeper down it.
I think that's wonderful. I mean,
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How can it not be? I mean, I've always had conversations like this with my friends, and they're always like, it hurt.
It's just way over their heads.
Usually, yeah. They're like, "What? What are you talking about?" It's like, "Oh my God, let me tell you." So anyway.
I love that.
All right. It's all right. Well, we have a few more questions coming from the chat. We want to try to get to a few of these. From Tammy Heitzman, Johnny, have you heard of the electron multiplying camera?
The electron multiplying camera. Enlighten us. Can they give us a further explanation? Because I mean, we can do lots of things with electrons, but how we multiply them?
Yeah. So Tammy, if you could.
Are they talking about like Kirlian photography, like basically like a type of aura camera,
where you can see in the different light ranges?
Well, let's go down that road. So aura cameras.
Yeah. I mean, like traditionally, we know that the experiments that you saw with Seaman Kirlian and all that, when we came up with the aura camera, that you could take like the limbs off a leaf, and then they put a certain amount of energy through it, and you could see that there was still, the parts of the leaf were still intact. That we do have these energy fields around us. Have you guys ever seen an aura before?
Yeah. I actually did. Oh, you mean like actually see people?
Or... Yeah, physical auras.
Yeah, and my daughter and I actually did aura photographs from the year she was turned 1 through 6, and it was really interesting to see how the colors would change. And when she started speaking, she started getting a white ball right in her like her throat chakra, where she's actually using this. And eventually our auras meshed together, and we were just purple.
I love that.
So
I love that.
So every year she would get a little bit older.
Have you? Well, here's the thing. I mean, a lot of people out there work with energy. They've done Tai Chi or they've done Reiki, the Mikao Usui system. Like when I can tell you do Reiki. And
I'm doing Reiki now.
Exactly. And so what everyone watching at home, I'm sure you've all done this where you've rubbed your hands together, then you move them together. And so they're, a couple inches away, and you move them back and forth. And you
make a little energy ball. Yeah.
Yeah, you can feel the energy that's there. You've stood behind someone's back and kind of put your hand out. You've kind of pushed them back and forth without touching them. We're all sort of sensitive to that. And we have an entire syntax in our language of these things. Like, how many of us say, I was feeling blue, I was sad, I was red with anger, or she was green with envy. A lot of the times we dress in the colors of how we feel. I guess that makes me... some miserable black dressed
no
funeral
it's the absence of all color, so you're taking in everything.
Yeah, exactly. And so one of the, exactly, you're exactly right, Victoria. But no, all joking aside, you know, the colors that we see around us a lot of the time, they are connected to that. We're always seeing auras, whether we like to know it or not. So one thing you can do if you're going to get your aura picture taken, you can kind of do an experiment that you can go look at your aura first. And it's very, very easy to see physical auras. So one way that everybody watching this at home on the other side of this screen or listening
Here's
to
some
it on
homework
Spotify
for you.
and iTunes, right? That's it. What you got to do is you got to jog the rods and cones in your eyes. Okay, so one way to do this is that you can go into a mirror or you can stand in front of someone at home and you can just look at your nose or their nose as a focal point. And so what you want to do is about three, as a pattern of three, you kind of want to look over where the nose is and you want to unfocus your eyes. Unfocus them so they go blurry for about, 10, 15 seconds and then refocus them. Do this about 3 times. And as you do it, you'll start to see that your eyes will start to be kind of jogged, and then look around your head or look around their head and just look around the perimeter, then back down to your nose. And you'll notice that through the peripherals of your eyes, you'll start to see these wavy colors. Now, usually yellow and green are the easiest ones to see. And they all have different colors and definitions and meanings that you guys can look up on the internet. But yellow is a color of thinking and analytical ideas and knowledge. Green is a very healing color. It's a color of growth. But, it's very simple. Red might be a passion or an anger or a fire color. But you can see other things in people's auras. Like if they're pregnant, you can see little kind of like gold balls and energy. You could, and if somebody hasn't spent enough time in nature, they've been, unhealthy or not sleeping well, you can see sort of a wavery aura. You can see auras around plants, around animals. It's very interesting and easy to see. It's a wonderful thing to learn how to do.
Absolutely fascinating area. And, like Victoria, I had the aura photo taken, that was years ago. But it was very interesting to see all the different colors. Now, when you talk about the focusing, is that similar to when you're taking a look at, you remember those 3D photos that you had to like really stare at and adjust your eyes?
Magic Eye?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, no, it's like that. But just unfocus your eyes. Try holding that for a bit and then refocus. So you just want to jog the rods and cones in your eyes. You can do different eye charts and exercises, but sometimes you may accidentally see this, when you're out. And I feel like I'm preaching to the choir a bit with Victoria as I look over there. I know she's already doing this on a daily basis, but with this, Mike, have you ever had it so you're walking down the street and it's a nice day, it's a nice, beautiful summer day, and you can see the outline, like this hazy outline amongst the trees on the tree outline? Sure. Or you've ever been at school or you've been at a church or somewhere and you can see the outline, like there's this whitish kind of energetic outline outside of someone standing at a background, maybe because they've half put you to sleep with some boring pontificating that they're doing up there, and you're relaxed, your eyes are relaxed, the lighting is just right. Well, this aspect is always coming up, and I really think it's a great thing. And auras, aura cameras are a great example of a sort of a psychic technology.
There you go. On that note, because I do want to get a couple more of these, this kind of came up earlier when we were, getting into psychic technology. Sarah Youssef asks, if a person is a mixture of frequencies, what is holding the integrity of a person together?
Well, I think it also is your thoughts, what are you doing with your harmonization of your vibration? Are you a tolerant, kind, loving, generous person? You're gonna attract these things coming back to you. You're going to be magnetic to it. I also think that things can affect your vibration and your frequency also with what you eat. And you don't have to be a vegetarian or a vegan or anything like that. But even if you look at meat, if you eat a lot of red meat, for example, it's not that it's bad. I'm not judging you for it if you do, because you can get iron that way. But if you do, the one thing is that red meat takes a lot more energy for you to digest in your body, more so than, chicken, or let's say people that eat fish and stuff like that. Those are more high vibrational, along with fruits and veggies and things like that. So if you're drinking a lot of water, bringing that up, that's going to up your vibration, your frequency, going to get you moving. Or if you're like Mike and I and just drink copious amounts of coffee, I'm sure that's
right.
doing something too to vibrate your energy. But anyways, with that, I would say that your thoughts are probably the greatest thing that's harmonizing your frequency. What do you guys think?
Definitely. I think so. Because jokingly, I always say I'm like Snow White, hi, hi, and I go out the door. I live in Disney. What can I say? Little wild animals, because I'm out here in the woods. They come up. Don't get me started on cats. They're not my cats, Mike. But cats are always.
They're not your cats, right?
Oh my gosh.
No, that's interesting that you mentioned that, Victoria, because we always end up with a plethora of birds out here. All kinds of squirrels will come up. We actually had in the tree line we'll get deer, but we actually had one come all the way up toward the bird feeders yesterday morning. So the wildlife around here is amazing. We're in a neighborhood.
Have you started naming them? Are you naming them yet? Because that's when
Well, we kind of try, but many of them look very similar. So it's like, is that one? So yeah.
Now you're talking my language when you start talking squirrels. I mean, that's the one thing for me. Everywhere I go in the world, I have the squirrels come to me. And a few years back, I was outside of an office, and they just, whether they're a spirit animal, I always notice they put away lots of little things for later, and I do something similar, and then I forget where I put it, or I find it by accident, like the squirrels do. One of the things is that I'll be in England in Hyde Park or something, and they'll just come up to me and start sitting on me and coming through. And I think you magnetize yourself, or you harmonize yourself with that frequency. So it really is true. We hold on to these things and change it. So what a great question.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. We have the world's largest freestanding squirrel statue in Texas. Just
do you really? Wow.
It's a must see if you come here.
Now I know why Elon Musk moved there.
Yeah,
that's right.
It's the squirrels.
Actually,
the squirrels are my totem animal, because they used to. Was it you, Mike? I was telling the other day. They used to knock on my door, like a man.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Right.
It's like, oh,
nuts, please.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, sorry.
Yeah, in my parents' yard, my father collected this massive, it's a big charcoal bag full of acorns, and he was like, "Here, these are for your squirrels." So we throw a few out there every morning.
You see, Mike, I learned something new about both of you. Here I was thinking you guys were just great people. Now I think you people are awesome. I mean, you're up here, and my
Did we raise
squirrel.
We've raised our frequency, or
yeah, you raised your frequency.
We're excelling on the Jonny meter.
Yeah, you're way up there in the acorn meter.
Nice. We have a great question here from Nathaniel Gillis. He wants to know what your view is on technology of the consciousness and how it pertains to the UFO abduction phenomenon.
Oh, that's a great question. So, with UFOs, I believe that most of them are entirely powered by consciousness. I think that that's how you interact with them, you steer them. Most of them are, from the people I talk to in these experiences, most of the UFOs are almost organic or alive, which is a very interesting thing, that you might be the key to the vehicle, so to speak. So when it comes to this sort of technology, I think our visitors, most of them, and if you think of it, if you're capable of interstellar travel, you have an incredibly advanced understanding of who we are and the ability to, heal the body, work with the mind and body. But everything that we've seen is connected to that. In fact, I don't believe, for the most part, in most of our sightings, experiencers, and visitations, that those are done by accident. I think that in everything I've discovered working with clinical hypnotherapy with people who have been contactees, is that they had an agreement already, whether you want to say as souls or as a part of their consciousness, that they were going to have these contacts, whether it was some kind of a past life they've had with this group or whatever it is. But it's all consciousness based.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating. And I think as we dive deeper and deeper into this research, we're going to really open that up. And Jonny, speaking of UFO abduction phenomena, are we allowed to go ahead and mention the conference?
Yeah, please do mention it.
All right. So coming up this February, is it the 27th to March 6th? I have the dates right there.
Well, you'd probably have the latest dates because I have been out of the loop the last few days. But you're absolutely right. It's at the end of February. And what it is the Laughlin UFO Mega Conference. And so this Laughlin, hey, I saw a few good things popping up there, including the poster.
Yeah, we'll talk about the other one in a moment. But
you're too kind. So, yes, here we are. We have the Laughlin UFO MegaCon. And this is great. It says there February 28th through March 6th. I see that the date has finally been set there. So, yeah, join us and 35 researchers and scientists. The seating is limited. Obviously, I think we're going to be capped at around 250 attendees there at the moment. There will be all the safe barriers there. There will be social distancing. There will be the use of masks, a health check at the hotel. Of course, all the hotels in Nevada are going to be doing health checks. But with that, once you come there, it's going to be great. You're going to get to listen to live presentations. We're going to have outdoor star sightings at night for UFOs and going out for groups. There's always great banquets and fascinating presentations and people there. But most particularly, who I am most excited to see is Mike Ricksecker, who is going to be looking at the concept of, are shadow people extraterrestrials?
Ooh, are they?
You're too kind, Jonny. No, and I do have to thank you, brother, for for including me in on that conference. It's going to be a fantastic time. I'm absolutely looking forward to it. And Quarantine Ghost has put the link down in the chat at Laughlin UFO megaconference.com, so you can get all the details there. And they're still adding the guest list to the site. This was just, if I bring the photo back up here, this was just a handful of us so far in there, but yeah.
It's going to be very exciting. And I know we're very grateful that you're coming, and it's going to be unbelievable. We had such a great time the last conference, which was just this last March, and it was amazing because we got it in just it was February into March, but it was a perfect timing hitting in February because it was just before this whole pandemic thing took off, and they got the conference in. Everybody had such a wonderful time. They've all been wanting to come back and do conferences again. What we're hoping for moving forward into next year is that, of course, people will be cautiously doing so, I'm sure, in their own ways, but we're hoping for some level of normality to come back out there. And I think that we do got to get back out there eventually and do these things again. And I know that we will get there. It's going to be an interesting journey ahead. But the exciting part is that we get to look at these concepts of UFOs, consciousness, ancient mysteries, shadow beings, and everything else.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I am looking forward to everybody else being there, finally getting to meet you, Jonny, and it's going to be an amazing time. Just the wealth of knowledge that's coming in from all over and exploring so many of these different topics that we've been talking about, and get a just much deeper dive into it. And one of the things I always love about these types of conferences is really the camaraderie that you build with people. So, Jonny, like I said, I'm looking forward to finally getting a chance to meet you and everybody else as well.
I love that, Mike. It goes both ways. Everybody that I've talked to there about you and who's seen you on the Alaska Triangle, they've looked at your show. They are all very, very excited to meet you. I know that one of my favorite subjects is the shadow beings. And to date, I don't know anyone who's covered it in depth the way that you have in your books and what you've talked about. And the upcoming documentary, I think, is going to be just unbelievable. So thank you again for sharing everything you have there with this great audience.
Yeah, definitely. And again, everybody, the link is Laughlin UFO megaconference.com. Quarantine Ghost has shared it in the chat. And also for those coming back later to watch this, the link will be down in the description. And then, Jonny, something else that we're also doing this coming year is Egypt. And I'm really looking forward to this one as well, Return of the Kepler Cycle. So
Yeah,
tell us a little bit about this.
I'm really excited that you're coming for this because, well, obviously your ability to be able to really measure energy fields and to take like a scientific approach and investigation of these things really excites me. But this is a very, very special tour. This is next year. We're doing the Return of the Kepler Cycle. Every year I do these tours to Egypt, but this tour in particular is going to be unbelievable. We have Patricia Mona coming, and she has found 29 bodies for the police. She is an expert remote viewer that's worked with the Monroe Institute, with Paul Elder. We have Jay Widener coming, who, again, is just a profound esoteric genius. And, of course, we have my very dear friend Mohammed Ibrahim, who's one of the world's foremost authorities on reading hieroglyphics and ancient mysteries. We have such exclusive permissions. Out of all my times going there, we've never had permissions like this due to the times we're in. And the great thing about Egypt, I was just there a few months ago. The great thing about it is they've now just upgraded everything. Millions and millions of dollars into new infrastructure, new airports. They're such incredibly hospitable people. It is my favorite place in the whole world to travel to. It is so unbelievably life-changing and magical. But when we go there, people might not be aware of this, but the date we chose is very significant because there is sort of a summer solstice portal opening that we are going to be out with a very exclusive permission at the time that the light's going to open up into a very secret and important place down by the Sphinx. And we're also going to be having our exclusive access into that enclosure, as well as into the Great Pyramid and many other places. So you do not want to miss this. If you want to seek the mysteries, look at stargates, ancient secrets, you got to be on this tour with us.
Oh yeah, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. I'm really so excited for this, Jonny. I mean, you mentioned Mohammed Ibrahim's expertise in hieroglyphics. I've actually been taking a course to get a brush up. Oh my God, I love it. Yeah, so I'm really stoked for this tour, and so it is. Let me go ahead and bring the link back up. I know Quarantine Ghost has put it down in there. In the chat, and it is in the description.
Return of the KeplerCycle.com.
Return of the KeplerCycle.com for those listening to the podcast later.
Yeah, and this goes back to sort of what, this goes back to what Victoria was saying on the question about the 1960s, about where we would look at the age of Aquarius. Well, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but again, in the mysteries, there's a lot of secrets about going back into this original transformative energy. And one of the things we look at with the scarab beetle is that the scarab beetle is not only like a hermaphroditic sort of androgynous sort of idea or concept that it basically can mate with itself, that you can look at the mysteries, but it's perpetually self-regenerating, not only with the dung that we would traditionally say that it's rolling up a hill again and again and coming back down with, hence the idea of it being a dung beetle, but in itself has this idea that we would very much relate to the concept of the age of Aquarius. So this is the new time for transformation. There's an ancient prophecy about a cleansing to the ancient Egyptian mysteries, and we're now re-entering that period of the Kepler cycle. So that's why this is so significant. It's such a powerful time to be there. And the mystery schools know that too. There are other things I won't talk about right now, but that have been ceremonially put up for those with eyes to see around the world, such as a very ancient obelisk that's now been erected in Cairo, just like the other ones that have Masonic significance over in the areas of Westminster and London to New York, or to which is Cleopatra's Needle over there, and one in Paris as well, which all come from the same place, which is on, or Heliopolis. This is why you turn the lights on. It's a bit of a Masonic secret. They all came from there over this place, which again is even connected to the one in front of the Vatican. So these pillars or obelisks being put up are very, very significant for this time of shifting, transformation, and new energy on the planet.
That is so amazing. And again, please come join us, everybody. It's going to be a great time. and I say that with Victoria sitting here, and following Egypt, we're going to Ireland. It's gonna 2021 is shaping up to be a great.
Hey,
year.
We're going to Ireland also. If you guys are in Ireland, I'll see you guys there. When are you going?
Yeah, we talked about that we're going to be there around the same time, July 1st through 9th.
Oh, yeah. Stone Circle.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And if you guys happen to be there at the same time as we are, you have to say hello. We'll have to meet up, and we'll have to go meet the Keg of the Fairies.
There you go. Absolutely. So, Jonny, we are at the end of the show. We actually went a couple minutes over, but that's all right. So, how can everybody find you? Check out your research. You have your YouTube channel, The Metaphysical Source, but you have all kinds of other things as well. You have your website and all that.
First of all, thank you so very much for having me on your show. It's always a pleasure. I enjoyed myself very much and talking to you two and the great questions that came from the chat room. Thank you all so much. To find me, you can get me at www.metaphysicalsource.com for my website, Metaphysical Source on YouTube. I'm Esoteric Jonny on Instagram. And for those old school folks that get called boomers like myself, I am on Facebook as Jonny Enoch. Thank you guys all so much. I appreciate you very much. And please stay tuned to this channel, like, subscribe, and share these videos with everyone you know, because the edge of the rabbit hole is awesome.
Aw, thank you.
Thank you, Jonny. You are such an amazing person, and we became fast friends with the Alaska Triangle, and I really appreciate you coming on here to the show right as we're finishing out 2020, and I'm looking forward to having a great year and working on some projects with you and with the conference, Egypt. It's going to be an amazing year, so thank you so much, my friend, for coming on tonight.
Thank you so much, too, man. Thank you.
All right, have a great night. All right, everybody.
Time to work.
I don't know. That was Jonny Enoch, everybody.
Johnny's awesome, man.
He is. He really is. He's an amazing guy. So, wow. Where do we? Oh, we have to do shout-outs and everything.
Before you do shout-outs, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
I just want to say congratulations on your 2 nominations.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Paranormal Rewind. Everyone go vote, please.
Yeah, everybody's been. I've seen some of the comments down in the chat that some people have been out there voting. I know Quarantine Ghost has been sharing that link, so thank you very much, QG, for doing that.
Yeah,
appreciate it. So yeah.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah, paranormal. What's that?
I was going to say something, but it's not politically correct, so never mind.
Oh, okay.
Go kick some ass, Mike.
Thank you. Yeah, paranormalrewind.com. The monolith said that, yeah. Paranormalrewind.com has the voting for that. So it's Paranormal Book for Walk in the Shadows, and then Paranormal Trailblazer.
Which is supposed to be like Director of the Year, is what Sam was telling me.
Oh, okay.
So it's like the big one.
That's the big one.
Prestigious one. Yeah,
cool.
The prestigious award. Yeah.
I appreciate whoever put the nominations out there. I really appreciate it.
You deserve them.
Well, thank you.
You don't have a monolith,
I don't have a monolith, but I could have the Paranormal Rewind awards.
Yeah.
Awards. Yeah.
You're gonna need a new shelf. That's all I say.
So.
Yeah.
All right. So let's go ahead and we'll get to the shout outs and all of that wonderful stuff. Victoria, thank you once again for co-hosting. Thank you, Quarantine Ghost, for haunting the chat, feeding me the questions. You guys had some great questions for Jonny, by the way. So,
yeah, my brain's tired. I just listened, and my brain's tired.
Yeah, he is just he is loaded with information. It's amazing.
Oh yeah.
So get to the Deep Down the Rabbit Hole Patreon patrons: Tom McNicholas, Andrew Cox, Dustin Samario, David Yeisley, and Joe Chandler. Thank you very much for being Deep Down the Rabbit Hole Patreon patrons. Also, stay tuned for Beyond the Shadows coming up next. That fantastic monolith that's behind Victoria. We're going to be talking about monoliths coming up on the show. We kind of briefly talked about it here on Edge of the Rabbit Hole, but we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive, and not just the whatever weird craziness has been going on out there lately. Although we'll start with that, and then we'll get into like some real monoliths and stuff. So
very cool.
Yes, it'll be fun. It'll be fun. It's going to be more of a lighthearted, fun episode to start. So
I think the monoliths have tied us all together. I mean,
they have.
We needed something. You know?
Right. Yeah. And this is finally something that's going to bring us together after all this craziness this year. So, absolutely. All
Way
right.
to go, Monolith.
Yeah. Way to go, Monolith. So let's get to the participants tab here. I want to thank Betty Lange for joining us this evening. Brenda Bound, thank you as well. There's Alina the Fam. Thanks for joining us once again. Honda Road Media's Fairy Queen, Diane Hilbert. Thank you as always. Helen Espinoza, thank you very much. Jackie Campbell, thank you as well. Robert Hanna and Sarah Youssef, thank you. Tammy Heitzman and Tracy Christian, thank you both very, very much. I know there's more people than that have been on tonight, so why the participants tab only has like a dozen people, I don't know. Because, there's Robert Hanna right there. Scroll up here a little bit. And Adam Tiller's probably lurking out there. Tim Schoen was on earlier, wasn't he? Patricia Mona was in the house, is going to be there on the Egypt trip.
Oh, that sounds so
great
fun.
to see Patricia out there. And yeah, there's Candy Orton. I know I saw Candy a few times this evening. So, yep, and there's Joe Chandler. Lenora Martinez, thanks for joining us. Donna Liska was in the house. So I think YouTube needs to fix their participants tab. There's EEQQ, thank you as always. Yeah, Andrew and his Trucking Gnomes, Andrew Cox. Let's see, Sarah Youssef, of course. I mentioned Jackie. So, if I missed you, go ahead, throw your name down there. Hopefully I'll get it before we sign off. TFT Tarot for today. Thank you once again. Kat Gash was in the house. Had some questions there. Thank you, Kat. And all right, I'm going to go ahead and scroll back down. Down. Can't bring me down. Greg Rinkin is in the house. Yep, see, there's Adam Tillery with the eyes lurking behind the scenes. All right. And, all right, I think that's about it, everybody. Okay. So hang on for about 10 minutes. We'll go ahead and switch everything out. We'll bring up Beyond the Shadows, and we'll be talking about those monoliths here very soon. So stay tuned. All right.
Monolith power.
Monolith power, yeah.
I'm sure you weren't born yet, but in the 70s they had pyramid power.
I was born in the 70s.
I don't know how old you are. 1870s, come on.
I was born in 1974. So,
okay, well,
I'm technically, I'm a 70s child, but I call myself an 80s child because that was my influential decade.
Cyndi Lauper has an amazing power over people. No, just kidding.
No, I wasn't a Cyndi Lauper fan. I was Motley
Tiffany?
Crue.
Oh, geez. Geez. Well, I listened to Tiffany and Debbie Boone and all this. Yeah.
Wow.
Madonna. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I changed a lot. Oh my God.
So mall music.
Yeah.
Because Tiffany got her start in the mall.
Oh, she did?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. I didn't know that. But anyway, pyramid power was a thing back in the 70s.
Okay.
So now it could be monolith power.
Monolith power. There you go. Okay. Why not? Well, and we're actually going to talk a little. We're actually going to talk a little bit about that on Beyond the Shadows, as we get into like the ancient monoliths. So,
Very cool. I'm excited.
All right.
Don't forget the blue light.
I'll try to remember. I know I forget it half the time. So, all right. Again, thank you, everybody, for Edge of the Rabbit Hole. Just hang on about 10 minutes. We'll switch to Beyond the Shadows. And Quarantine Ghosts, again, has the links down there for Laughlin UFO megaconference.com and then the whole Beauty Egypt Tours. Beauty Egypt Tours is where the whole Kefir Cycle Egypt Tour goes through. And I know on the poster it says return to kefircycle.com. Basically, it forwards you to that Beauty Egypt Tour. So if you check it out, don't be alarmed that there's a forward on that. That's the way it's set up.
I went to the 50th anniversary of the alleged crash at Roswell.
Mm-hmm.
That was the most amazing week. So this Laughlin conference, it's going to be awesome.
Yes, it will. It absolutely will. I'm looking forward to it. That's going to be cool.
Yes.
So.
Okay, I'll be quiet now.
All right. So we'll see you in a few minutes, everybody.
Bye. Have a good week.
Take care. And I do want to thank everybody who did vote. Just throw that back out there.
You know, I have like 5 emails. I'm not saying I used them all.
But no, it was, again, it was very, very kind of everybody. So I do thank you very much. So
Yeah.
don't want to forget a thank you. So here we go.
No.
Now we'll end the show.